Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. It's your boy Shifty coming at you with another one. Welcome to my fourth installment of Mock Draft Monday. We only have one more Mock Draft Monday, and that will be the final one next Monday, right before the draft. It's so close. I really can't wait. Now, before we hop into this mock draft, let's just go over a couple of new developments with the 49ers. Deebo Samuel, we really don't know what's going to happen. Ultimately, I think this will get resolved. We know how important Deebo is to the franchise, to this type of offense. So I think ultimately a deal will get done. After that, we did sign Trey to a one-year deal at edge, and I think he is due for an Arden Key-esque type season for maybe having 6 to 8 sacks. So that really pushes our need for edge down quite a bit. Mike McGlinchey is actually looking in great shape. In my last video, I put out that he was looking a little skinny, and then Mike McGlinchey responded, not to me, but just to, in general, I think showing off his training resume and everything, and he is looking really good. So hopefully right tackle, at least for 2022, should be locked up. Now, without further ado, let's get into the draft. Alrighty, so let's kick off the fourth installment of Mock Draft Monday. Here we go. Now, I did release a video very recently which was talking about the possibility of the 49ers moving up from pick 61 overall to the early-ish middle of the second round, ideally for a safety. So one of those safeties that maybe falls a little bit. So whether that's a Jalen Petrie, Jaquan Brisker, there's Daxton Hill, Lewis Seen. So there's a lot of different guys at safety, and it's traditionally not a position that's super valued high, but I think late first, early mid-second is typically a sweet spot for safeties to go in, especially safeties who, of course, you feel like would come in and have a fairly immediate impact. Now, so that's our number one need, in my opinion. Beyond that, if we look at some of the other needs, it's interior offensive line. So Alex Mack probably going to retire after this coming season. I think at the guard position, I like Aaron Banks. He's looking, pretty solid. He should be able to just be slotted in at right guard. I do like Brunskill, but as I've mentioned numerous times, I think his ultimate value would be more so going, being the kind of guy who is the sixth offensive lineman. Should anyone get hurt? Hopefully not. But should anyone get hurt, then he can just come in, slot in, and play solid at almost any position. So here we are. We're at pick 61, second round. A lot of different options here. Now, it looks like my guy Dylan Parham, who I took in the second round last year, looks like he is gone. So we're going to have to go in a different direction. Now, I like Trey McBride a lot, and I took him at this position before as well. But, tight end, although I do actually think it's a relative need because I'd like us to have a solid backup to Kittle. I just think at this point it's maybe a little bit, asking a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go a little bit off the cuff, and someone in the comments had mentioned before, this guy here, Travis Jones from UConn. So here's the thing with Travis Jones. He's a monster of a man. Let's check out his bio right here. So he is 6'4", 325. Now he's awesome against the run. But another thing too, which he does a fantastic job of, he's fairly explosive. Now he not much of a gap penetrator, but he's someone who just pushes offensive linemen back, which really throws off a lot of quarterbacks, so that makes them have to move out of the pocket. And when we have guys like Bosa on the edge, Ebukam, Hyder, Trey, who we signed, that could really be beneficial for those guys just cleaning up those sacks, especially against, quarterbacks who are not very mobile. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Travis Jones, UConn. I think the value here is awesome. Our biggest needs, interior offensive line and safety, didn't really match the pick that we had right there. So instead of forcing a pick for a need, I'd rather just go with someone who's going to be an awesome player. Now, you could for sure argue that interior defensive line is not a major need. Of course, we did lose DJ Jones, but Javon Kinlaw's coming back from injury. I think Eric Armstead's going to play a lot more inside than we saw in 2021, especially early on. We also have Hassan Ridgeway, Maurice Hurst, but there are still question marks. Kinlaw, still a question mark. Hurst, a question mark. Kevin Givens, I like. Ridgeway is okay, very much a depth guy, rotation guy. But if I could go back, so let's just see. So we picked 61. Now, if I were in a perfect world to trade up for a safety, I'm probably... I don't even know if we could trade up for a safety in this case. Jalen Petrie went to 37, so maybe we would trade with the Texans. In this case, in this scenario, we'd probably give up picks, 61, maybe 105, and maybe a player as well, like a young player, maybe like a Dre Greenlaw. Even though I love Greenlaw, we do have solid depth at linebacker, and we have shown an ability to really effectively develop linebackers here in San Francisco. So, yeah, I don't know if I would... I would definitely consider that trade, but I don't know if I would do that. So, anyways, let's get back to the pick here. Round 3, pick 93 overall. It blows my mind here that Trey McBride is still here. I can't believe that. This just might be a pick where I'm like, I don't think I can turn this down. I'm not really picking for need here, obviously, but I think I have to take Trey McBride. At 61 overall, yeah, I think it's pushing it a little bit. But, man, if you can get Trey McBride right here, I think we're going BPA, but he can be the primary backup to George Kittle. And we know that George Kittle, he plays a lot, so maybe giving Kittle a little bit more rest in some of these games, especially through the regular season, would be a good thing. But not only that, Kittle, we know how physical he is, so he tends to miss games. So having a guy like Trey McBride who can come in, I think would be fantastic. Plus, I'd love to see what Shanahan can do to just add another dimension to this defense where, it gives defenses another thing to think about when it's like, oh, now you have Kittle, you have McBride, you have Samuel, you have Ayuk, you have Mitchell. There's so many things that like defenses will be like, where do we even begin? Also, should use check miss anytime. I think Trey McBride, very, very versatile, could even fill that role too. So this is definitely a draft where I'm kind of going out of what I would normally do. But hey, we are still left here with some really, really solid options. So we have Cole Strange here from Chatanooga. This is someone who's absolutely a developmental starting guard. I completely agree with that. I think he could potentially come in right away. Now, the tricky thing is coming from Chattanooga is like the level of competition from there right to the NFL might mean that Brunskill might have to start right away. We do have Cam Jurgens here. I want to say he's maybe more of a center, which would be definitely more of a long-term pick. Very similarly would be Alec Lindstrom, mostly a center who I really like Alec Lindstrom, but would be more of like a pick for 2023. So I think we could possibly, go with one of those guys. I wouldn't be opposed to any of them, especially Jurgens or Lindstrom. Some other options here. Brian Robinson, definitely gaining some traction here. Really fantastic running back from Alabama. Didn't get to show a lot of what he could do because he was behind guys like Najee Harris, so always kind of playing second fiddle to someone except last year, and he showed some really, really solid things here. Now, for me, I think I'm actually going to go with Cole Strange because we do need to fill one of our biggest needs. Now, as you guys may have noticed, one of my biggest draft crushes I left there is Martin Emerson. I think he's going to be fantastic. I love the way Martin Emerson plays the game. Someone who plays with extreme confidence, potentially cockiness, but a lot of times he can back it up. I'm just really watching the draft board here, and damn it, he just went there just a few picks before our next one. But someone who I do like a lot, Martin Emerson, especially for this scheme. Not a man-to-man guy. When he does that, he struggles. There's actually kind of a bit of a Twitter video meme deal about Martin Emerson where he's talking smack to the receiver and then the next play he just gets beat on a touchdown, but in more of a zone, I think he'd be awesome. So let's see who we have here. So we are at round 4, pick 134. Excuse me. Now, Rachaad White is someone who I've picked before, someone who I really like. Would be a perfect fit for this team. Just does it all. I look at him and I see, Arizona State, the same school that Brandon Ayuk went to. But I just look at Rachaad White play, and I'm like, man, he just looks like a 49er. What I am going to do, though, is I'm actually going to take the cornerback from Cincinnati, which is Coby Bryant, and I think he would be someone who could very well develop in this defense. Now, he wouldn't be expected to start by any means, so because if you think about our cornerbacks, we're actually, especially with adding Coby Bryant right here, we're actually fairly deep. So when you think about this, you think about Emmanuel Mosley, Charvarius Ward, Ambry Thomas, Dante Johnson. We have Dennard. We have Diamador Lenore, and now we have Coby Bryant. So we have a lot of different guys. Darky's Dennard, yeah. And a bunch of guys here. So the competition will be stiff. But I think it's a fantastic way to go. I think it's having depth at that. We just saw how important it was last season to have depth at the cornerback position. I'll never want to see Josh Norman or Drake Kirkpatrick in a 49er uniform. Never again. Oh, that was rough. Round 5, pick 172. I'm going to take the guy that I always take here. We're not going to think about it. Pierre Strong Jr. Watch the other videos. You've seen me talk about him all the time. Just another scheme fit for Kyle Shanahan. I think someone who could really push Elijah Mitchell actually for the starting role. But kind of like last year, we did see our running back depth get tested. So when you think about it, last year we lost, like Trey Sermon went down, Mostert went down, a lot of guys went down. So I want to say right here is a perfect time to go for someone like a Pierre Strong who fits the scheme, lightning fast, solid catcher of the ball, and just really ensures that we have that depth. So as we head into 2022, we got Mitchell, we got Sermon, we got Wilson Jr., we have JaMychal Hasty, Pierre Strong Jr. Depth is not a concern right there. Don't want to jinx it, though. Right here, Cade Mays is someone who I actually do quite like. We're now in round 6, pick 187. Looking at Cole Turner, if we hadn't taken... I like Cole Turner a lot. He did not test well at the Combine, but I like him a lot. But having taken Trey McBride, that would be completely redundant. Kalen Barnes, great name. I'm kind of, especially towards the later round picks, I kind of have my guys, and I think I'm going to start kind of going to that, which is Verone McKinley. Now, some people like him, some people don't. He's definitely a bit of a gambler. He will make some big plays, but also whiff on some big plays. So I think, to me, in a case with Verone McKinley, ideally, he wouldn't be starting right away. I don't think he should start, regardless of what team he goes to. Now, when I think about Verone McKinley, I think what would be an ideal scenario is that we would actually bring back Jaquiski Tart on a 1-year deal, let McKinley learn, playing a lot of snaps in preseason and whatnot, but let McKinley learn the position, and then, maybe 2023 or maybe towards the end of next year, he can come in. Because if there's one thing that we need at the safety position, that is, and even just the defensive back position, is a lot more big-time plays. Jimmy Ward, of course, had that one game against the Rams, I think on Sunday Night Football, which was really impressive, 2 interceptions, but beyond that, it's almost hard to think of like big plays that our secondary made, and McKinley, I think, is someone who could absolutely bring that aspect to our defense. Now, again, I'm sticking with my guys here. So we have back-to-back picks here. These are both compensatory picks in round 6. I'm going Tyquan Thornton, the speedy guy from Baylor. Basically, what I'm hoping for is a Marquise Goodwin-esque type impact, someone who's lightning quick, really solid size. I actually think in reality, I doubt if he'd be here at this point. I think he's probably more of a 5th-round pick, just that speed. I think it'll be really hard for teams to pass up on. We always see speedy receivers get drafted higher than they should. You think back to a higher pick like a John Ross, I think 9th overall to the Bengals, even someone like Mecole Hardman to the Chiefs. I don't think people thought he would be a 2nd-round pick, but just that speed is hard to turn up on. So Tyquan Thornton here, really solid size, maybe can get a little bit bigger, but just stretch the field, And if you think about just all these different options that Trey Lance would have at receiver, that would be just fantastic. Now, you add McBride, you add Thornton, that's just 2 different things that we really didn't have last year. So really liking that pick. Now, let's see who else that we could go with. So I am tempted just because the coaching at our edge position is so good with Chris Kasorik and in this defense. I'm tempted to go potentially with an edge player. I really don't think Odamewa for Minnesota would be really a fit, though. Just not really what we'd look for. We have more than enough guys who can do that role. So I'm actually thinking more along the lines of linebackers. So Micah McFadden is someone who I think could very well be a solid guy to develop, decent measurables, a little bit on the smaller side, but I guess that's just how linebackers, come along these days. So linebackers are smaller and faster than ever before. So someone, who I think is really solid, who I think we could develop, especially, let's just say if we did a trade at pick 61, we give up like a Dre Greenlaw, maybe another pick next year or something, and then we move up to get a higher rated safety. Maybe we have a little bit of a need at linebacker, but either way, I think it's always good to take a position like linebacker. You never know how these guys can develop. Linebackers are one of those positions where you can draft later and still get really good value out of it. Of course, Fred Warner turned into an all-pro, and we got him in the 3rd round. Not that I think Micah McFadden would necessarily have that kind of impact, but maybe he's a very solid rotational guy, maybe a bit of a special teams guy too. So in reality, the 49ers actually have one more pick. I believe we have the Mr. Irrelevant pick. So very quickly, Smoke Monday, Zonovan night. There are some other options here that we're not going to get a chance to pick simply because, according to the Draft Network, we don't have the Mr. Irrelevant pick, but I believe that we do. So let's very quickly talk about the picks we made. Travis Jones at pick 61. Now, this is not a need pick by any means, but a BPA pick, best player available pick, someone who shores up our defensive line. If we know anything from the John Lynch front office, that we love to draft defensive linemen. And hey, having the best defensive line in football, never a bad thing, especially when you have really solid linebackers behind them to really make the most out of the front 7. Next, pick 93, Trey McBride, a do-it-all tight end, can line up all over the field, gives Trey Lance another option. Trey McBride, Trey Sermon, Trey Lance, it's really going to be the Trey area in San Francisco. Love McBride to back up Kittle, to be one of those guys who maybe gets forgotten about by defenses, and then all of a sudden, bam, he has like a 60-yard touchdown. Cole Strange, someone who I think could very well develop into a starting guard. I think might have a similar trajectory as Aaron Banks did. With a Cole Strange, I don't know if he would start right away. Not that it's impossible to make that leap from a school like Chattanooga up to the NFL. I want to say Terrell Owens went to Chattanooga, but I think it would take him a little bit longer. When you have to play against guys like in our division, like Aaron Donald twice a year, that's not going to be super fun, especially when you're used to playing against nothing near that kind of level. So maybe Brunskill would start the year at left guard, but I think Strange could work himself into that lineup. Then we have Coby Bryant, so someone who's going to be a depth piece at cornerback, not expected to start, learn the scheme, and really come along a little bit slower. And then if there are some injuries, maybe he plays a little bit. Maybe he becomes more of like the dime back, if you will. But I really wouldn't expect to see much of him this year, but someone who absolutely has potential to develop and fantastic size for this scheme. Pierre Strong, talked about him a bunch of times, perfect fit. Verone McKinley, also someone who I like a lot more than others, I believe, but is someone who could ultimately develop into a ball hawk safety, given time to develop and then allowed to kind of free roam a little bit too. And I love the passion that this guy, if you ever see Oregon play defense, whenever there's a big tackle or anything, McKinley's the guy who's just jumping around going crazy. Never a bad thing to have that kind of passion, especially on defense. Tyquan Thornton, speedy guy, potentially a bigger Marquise Goodwin. Micah McFadden, someone who we could develop. We've shown an ability to develop linebackers. Azeez Al-Shire is another one too, who I think was undrafted, who we brought on to be a capable starter. Alshire was fantastic last year. Maybe McFadden can develop along too, and then we could potentially trade Greenlaw or an Alshire and get like a decent pick in return. So there is my draft here, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know maybe what other directions you would have gone in. I definitely didn't draft for need, especially early on in this one, but I just wanted to add some quality players. I'd like to think that I did that pretty well. I'm going to have some more videos coming out, of course, before the draft, and we'll have one more mock draft Monday before the big event itself. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Hope you guys like it. Leave your comments, liking and subscribing. I've noticed all the new subscribers. It's awesome to see. I'm going to leave it there. And you know, guys, I'm going to say two things. The butt counts. Catch y'all on the flip side.